G'day, welcome back to Waller Customs. Today we're going to look at my Ghostbusters Ecto-mobile, which is a revamped version of the 2014 LEGO Ecto-mobile set, which I was actually the fan designer for through LEGO Ideas. And though I was really happy with how that set turned out, there's been a lot of parts that have come out and a lot of new techniques have come out through LEGO that I've seen over the last 8 years since that set came out. So with those new parts out, I thought I'd try my hand at designing a new Ecto one with a more accurate representation of the vehicle that's used in the movie. And I thought I'd merge some of the features that the 2016 reboot Ecto-mobile had with opening back door and side doors and try and make it a little bit more accurate to the actual car that's in the movie, so it's a little bit longer than the Ecto-mobile that came out through the LEGO Ideas website. And it has more features and more playability, I guess, than that set. So it's kind of taking the best of all the LEGO Ghostbuster sets that have come out, smashing them all together and giving me a little my own flair. And in case you haven't told by the thumbnail, you can get the instructions for this for free on my website right now, wallercustoms.com, along with the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man behind me. So let's take a closer look at it. So yeah, at first glance it probably doesn't look terribly different from the original LEGO Ideas Ghostbusters set, but I've tried to make it more accurate visually and have more functionality and usability than that original set. Not that there's anything wrong with that set, Marcus Besser did an amazing job designing it, but with all the new techniques that have come out in the last 8 years since that set came out, and all the new pieces, I've tried to adapt a lot of those into the new design as much as possible, and a lot of the stuff I've taken is actually from Marcus Besser's 2016 reboot Ecto-mobile. So the ability to open both front doors here was borrowed from his design, and also the ability to open the back door here. It's also borrowed from his design from the 2016 reboot set. But one of the biggest things I wanted to include was the ability to fit all 4 Ghostbusters, which was one of the biggest complaints about that original LEGO Ideas set, was the inability to fit all 4 Ghostbusters inside. So I've got them in there with ample room to fit. They can all fit in. I've got 3 of the proton packs in the back there. You could probably squeeze 4 if you pushed it and packed it tight. But if we just remove them, so with the 4 gone, you can see there's some computer details there and equipment in the back there, which you could probably remove to allow you to fit the 4 proton packs with no issues. A lot of the rooftop details for the greebling and equipment on top is very similar to the original. I have redesigned it slightly to help strengthen that roof, so when you take the whole thing off, it's a little bit stronger and holds together a bit better. Another detail I've included is a little engine in bay in here in front, which I kind of copied the styling off of the USC Ghostbusters Ecto-mobile interior. It's got the blue paint there on the engine, and I've tried to squeeze as much detail as I could in there, in that tiny little space, while still retaining the ability to have that hood close. So a lot of the front looks very similar. I've used these new pieces to achieve that slope, and most of this side profile here, the whole sort of hood is built out sideways from the front, so it's all pointing in this direction, which is quite tricky to achieve and be structurally sound. And that was one of the biggest downsides about this that I couldn't include. I really wanted to try and squeeze the gunner seat in from Ghostbusters Afterlife, but with the doors open, there's only really 2 plates of depth there where you can fit strengthening through it. So I tried to get it in there, but as soon as I extend the opening to be wider than what it is now, it starts to flex a little bit, particularly when the roof is not on. There's already a little bit of flex you can see in the body, and if I was to extend that further to try and squeeze that gunner seat in, the whole thing would become a little bit weaker and not quite as strong. So instructions are there if anyone wants to try and attempt it themselves, they sure can. But in my instance, I sort of opted for accuracy to the original as opposed to the Afterlife version. So if you do have the original Ghostbusters Ecto Ideas set, the parts in that will go a long way towards being able to build this, particularly the windscreens, the windows, some of these fins at the back here, the printed elements like the number plate and the Ghostbusters logos, and particularly silver coloured hubcaps, which go for a few dollars I think now in Bricklink. Gets you about 50 to 60% off the top of my head of parts you need for the new version, and hopefully you have a lot of the others in your own collection. If you decide to download the instructions, you'll find there are a few differences between what you're seeing now and what the instructions say. That's because there's a few things that, in most cases, I tried to stick to what LEGO would do, so I tried to not use too many illegal techniques and use things that LEGO wouldn't do themselves. But because this is for my own collection, I decided to ignore that a little bit and do things that Lego wouldn't do. So for example, here you can see there's a paint line that runs in to accentuate that fin that runs down the back. And I did that myself using some masking tape and a red paint pen, which I had to do multiple coats. And as you can see, it doesn't quite give you the same sheen as Lego does. It's got kind of a mottly, patchy sheen to it. So you could use spray paint if you wanted to, but that's something Lego doesn't do. They don't do stickers across multiple elements like that. If they were to do it, they'd try and figure out a way to make that one big sticker. I doubt they'd ever try and do it across 3 multiple parts. So that's something you can attempt yourself. That's relatively risk-free. The other bit, which isn't terribly risk-free, is this dish here at the top here, which this dome is taken from Buzz Lightyear's dome. And I think I'll take it off here. It's attached into a round plate with a bar down the middle, and they've got very fine pins there. And you can attach the pin inside the top of that round plate with the bar sticking out because there's a tiny little hole, but it's very, very fragile. It will break very easily, and as you can see on mine, it has broken, and I've had to glue it back together. So that's an instance where I wouldn't recommend anyone do that unless they either want to risk it and then have to glue it together like I did permanently, or they're just more gentle than I did and they want to use it for display. So although this is more playable for that instance, you wouldn't want to give this to a kid to play with, because that would snap off in no time, because it snapped off for me and I wasn't even playing with it. So this one's actually a little bit longer than the original Lego Ideas Ecto-mobile as well. I think it's more accurate now. What I did when I was building it, I did most of this in a digital format in Studio. I designed it and then sort of laid it in Photoshop over blueprints of the actual Ecto-mobile so I could get a gauge for how accurate I was to the shape and length. So in that case, I found the original Ecto-mobile probably sits about that long where my finger is here, but I really wanted to be more accurate to the original thing. I think it's maybe a little bit lower from memory, I can't remember. But this isn't inside information from me coming from Lego Ideas as the fan designer of the original Ecto-mobile. This is something I wouldn't say cotton on to, because I don't know if it's accurate, but I know working in the video game industry, you can't just take an existing car that exists from a manufacturer and just use it in a video game or make a model of it without permission from the license holder. So I'm wondering whether the original Lego Ecto-mobile wasn't actually licensed from the license holder of the manufacturer of the car, and in that case you have to legally, in video games you have to legally change it within a certain percentage. So you have to change the shape of it slightly so it doesn't quite match the original thing. So I'm wondering if that's the case in the case of the Lego Ideas set, because when I got the big USC Ghostbusters car, the Ecto-mobile, I noticed that the branding for the car was scattered all through the manual. So I'm wondering whether in that case they did get the license for it so they were able to be more accurate to the original car, whereas in the case of the Lego Ideas perhaps they weren't, so maybe that's why it didn't match quite so accurately. So I'm not entirely sure, or maybe that's just a case of, as I said, the pieces weren't available to do what they wanted to do back in the day, so who knows.
Hello, New York! Well, everybody! Well, Dr. Ray Stantz, would you please? The heart of the Ghostbusters. Thank you. They love you. They love you here.
There you go. I think that just about wraps it up for my Ecto-mobile. And don't forget, instructions for both this and that larger Stay Puft Marshmallow Man behind me are on my website, wallercustoms.com. You can download them for free. Build your own version, modify it, try and include the gun door on the side there if you can. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
You can't park that here. Everybody can relax. I found the car. Needs some suspension work and shocks and brakes, brake pads, lining, steering box, transmission, rear end. How much?
Only 4,800. Maybe new rings, also mufflers, a little wiring.